Hey, Jim, you say that Russia, you correctly say that Russia's a long way from home in Venezuela, but on the other hand, they have a lot of influence there. They were able to apparently talk Maduro out of leaving. They've got $20 billion just with one company. It's probably Putin's own company called Rosneft. $20 billion of investment through that company. So they have a lot of influence there, and it is in our hemisphere, and the Monroe Doctrine has never been repealed. So, I mean, you say no military forces, but what are we going to do to get the Russians out? What kind of deal do we make with the Russians to get them out of there?
Well, I don't think this is in the hands of the Russians or the Cubans. Ultimately,
well,
it's in the hands of the
forgive me,
Venezuelans
Jim, but they talk Maduro out of leaving.
Right. So, and here's the challenge for the senior Venezuelan military. Even if they want to go for Guaido, everything they do is being watched by a Cuban or a Russian, and the first thing they're going to do is grab that guy and tell Maduro to take him out back and shoot him. So they're really caught between two immovable forces here. But I think once this cracks, if it cracks, there aren't enough Cubans and Russians in there to keep a lid on this thing.
What
I mean,
does
they're
a crack
going to wind
look
up.
like?
I mean,
James, you keep saying that once this cracks,
well, the military
then
would have
tilts.
to. The senior military would have to flip and support the people. I think that's the consensus all around.
So that gives us a good sense of the what. Now, what about the when? How long do you think, at the most, this might take to play out? You think we're going to see some kind of result here soon?
Yeah, I would guess so. I don't think Guaido has the capacity to sustain this over time. Either momentum builds very quickly and these guys flip, or they suppress it very quickly and it's very bloody and we're done.
What about
Jim,
from an aid standpoint? Do you see a role in terms of getting aid to the people there on the ground if this is something that plays out over a long period of time?
I think it would be quite difficult. You're going into basically a civil war where you have a non-permissive environment. You have one side that is hostile and actually trying to prevent the delivery of aid. I think it'd be very complicated.
Jim, what happens when this whole thing settles? Say that Maduro's ousted. This is a very rich country, even though it's destitute right now because of mismanagement, mainly in their oil fields. This is tailor-made for the Belt and Road Initiative for China or for Rosneft in Russia. Who steps in to help Venezuela because they don't have the money to upgrade their oil facilities to start producing oil? How does this play out post-Maduro, if Maduro is ousted, for their oil field assets?
Well, there's two variables there. One is I do believe the United States international community would bring a lot of support. And since the country is really very recoverable, I mean, the recovery could come very quickly, I think they'd be willing to do that. The real question is what does the government look like? Guaido said he'd be an interim government, so there'd have to be an election. And then if that government is honest and transparent, they're not going to repeat the mistakes of the last regime. And and essentially sing the tune of the Russians and the Chinese, and they'll have an alternative. They can turn to the West. But those are the variables that would have to play out.
Jim, there was one mistake that was made before Maduro, even before Chavez. That was made back in the 60s and 70s when they nationalized the oil company. That's when it was a slow drip since then of more and more corruption, and that led to Chavez and that led to Maduro. Is there any way to privatize the oil company, which has been nationalized for too long and has been the source of a lot of the corruption there?
Well, you would have. I think there is a chance here because one, you'd have to have a government that is open and transparent and willing to engage with the West. I think they could do that. The other is there will be support for a transition. The international community will step up, I truly believe, including the United States. So there will be money, there will be aid, there will be jobs, there will be construction, and so that would help foster that transition. Remember, right now, these people have nothing. Virtually the entire country is below the level of poverty, and inflation is so rampant that the money is worthless. So even a little bit of economic freedom and a little bit of development will make them feel like they're in a different world.